Okay, let's hope it actually works this time. Come on. Oh, yep. There you go. Okay, cool. It is working. Alright. Hello, people that are here. I don't actually know how many people are here at the moment. Looks like about 2 people. I'll probably wait for maybe a few more people to join before I start stuff. Oh, hi, Sion. But yeah, so what I am going to be making over probably the next few weeks is I don't want to overload people with information, is I am going to be designing a game mode that is similar-ish to Dark RP in the terms of how it functions. And so that's my plan. So there's not going to be anything complicated like character systems or an admin system as well. It's just going to be simple, hopefully clean, and optimised game mode. I'll be honest, I haven't actually decided on everything that I'm planning on doing yet, so there will be a bit of time where I'm making stuff up on the fly. Oh, that reminds me, I also need to actually drag Discord onto my other screen. Yeah, let's just drag that over here, just so that I know I won't accidentally show a channel I shouldn't do. Okay, so first thing, I guess I'll start, as I know this is recorded anyway. So the first thing that you need to do before approaching any of your game mode is you need to decide first how you're going to design it. So there are 2 main designs that are used. One of them is where you work off, you have a schema or a library as your base, and then from there you develop a, did I say schema? I meant framework or library as base, and then you create a schema or some form of structured thing on top of it. So this is the style of game mode that NetScript uses, and this is what Dark RP wants you to use, but basically no one uses Dark RP that way. So in NetScript you have your base NS game mode, but if you don't add anything extra onto it, nothing can be it doesn't work. You require extra code to make it work, and then so that's one of the differences between the 2. Another thing that you need to decide is whether you are going with a module system where you split your code up depending on kind of similar systems, or if you want to share it up based off of kind of the realm that it exists within. So it's like if we look at meta, you can see there's a whole load of shared meta stuff in there. So it's not based off of the add-on that they're from. It's like CL Hoax, SH, and so on. So I'm probably going to go with the module system, is what I'm thinking. Just because, yeah. I basically put not a lot of thought into this so far, and I just thought on exactly how I'm going to structure it. Just some of the stuff. So the first thing that we're going to need to work on is we're going to need to work on our game mode a bit, because currently all we have is a single txt file, and that's not going to be very helpful in the long run. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create 2 files. Oops. Seems like my PC is not liking the fact I'm streaming. So I need an init.lower, and then I will also need a cl_init.lower. So these are just the 2 files that you require. Just make a game mode. This is server. This is client. Technically with this now, I can actually run this game mode. So if I type n in here again, it should now hopefully launch the server without crashing itself. Okay, it seems to be not liking something. Yeah, so it'll take some time. I don't think I have any collections or anything linked to this, but this should now hopefully start. Okay, let me just lower the quality of the stream that I am watching, just so I can get the view count, because I don't have anything fancy. Okay, so this should hopefully finish uploading, but in the meantime we can start working on blocking out our code. So for this I just like to write an extra file here, which is basically to-do.txt, and so here we'll just record everything that we need to do. So the first thing I'm going to need is the job system plus categories, let's go with, or maybe factions or teams, whatever. So that's the one that I am intending to do, and I cannot spell. Let's go with that, though that could still be wrong. We then also need a money plus salary system, voice plus chat system, and that is pretty much the basics of like really crude what you need for a dark RP server, or maybe not dark RP server, but something for like Stars RP. This is really all you need. Like there's some bells and whistles here and there that you need, but everything else is just this at its core. Like, I guess also technically within here you need whitelisting, and stuff like that. So let's work off our modules. So how I like to write my modules is I have core underscore modules, and then I also have modules. So core, no, just modules. So core modules get loaded before you load normal modules, and they just have stuff about them. So this will be things that are in every game mode you have, and so that there can't be problems. So this thing we want to do is create a new folder and call it jobs. Jobs. And then inside of folder here, I'm gonna write. Let's go with manifest. So we create manifest.lower, and we just return a table. So our manifest.lower is going to be our file that dictates stuff to do with our module. So you can have a name to it, so this would be like job system. We can add author, so that would just be me. Let's see, what else can we add? We can go with version. So just 1. And then we have CL client files, shared files, and then server files. And then something else I'll go with is onload. Don't know what the args is going to be, so I'll just put don't know. So now that we have done this, we now need to decide upon how we are going to do the job system. So there are 2 ways that we can do this, and this is one that we write the registering in a shared file, or we do it server side and then network it over to the client. So they both have their advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of doing the shared one is that you don't need to network it, and there is never any desync between server and client. But the downside of this is that on the client, they will get every single job that you create. It will be sent to their client, and they will just have that file, and they can just include it, and they don't need to fix up any of the data. So I think I will go with the one that is just easier to do, which would be a shared file for registering the jobs. So if we just go, let's just for formality give it an sh underscore, and then go with job.lua. And so now if we create a new file in here, cool, sh underscore job.lua, I might scrap this manifest file, I don't know. I like the idea of it. Let's go with that. Anyway, so we're going to need to have 2 functions. So faction table. So we have, I'm going to call them faction, because why not? Now, there's lots of things that you need to basically just think about when you're writing this, because you could have jobs associated with factions, or you could have them referencing each other. So there's lots of different ways you can go about it. So what I mean by that is, like, in the faction table, we could have a faction that is just called like Sith, and then inside of Sith we have a list of jobs, and inside there we have like Acolyte. I'm not sure if that's right. And so we have job info in here, which could work. Or instead, we don't have jobs stored here. We have it stored just in a separate table, sort of here, where you just have the job registered here. So it depends on what you want, and then like you just have a faction equals Sith like this. Both are acceptable, both work. It's personal preference mostly. One of them gives you so the one where you store a reference to the faction like this one means that if you want to get from faction to job, it's very slow, because you don't have any references to things, you just have their names. But if you have the job actually stored in the factions, then this table will take up more memory because you'll have a reference inside of each other. And so it uses more memory, but it uses less CPU. So it's all a balancing act, and a lot of it is personal preference. So one of the neat things that you'll start to learn is that just this table, you can technically store references on here at the same time, and both work, and both will be the same faction. So let's start with, let's just start writing some dummy information so that I know what I can work off. So I'm going to have a name, which will obviously be Sith. What else will we have? I guess we'll have a description. So we'll go Dark Force users. What else will we have? I guess order and color, which will be a color. That's not the color I meant to do. I meant to do that. Okay. So, are the two people that are watching this, are you guys following? Yes, so far. Radio silence. Wonderful. Alright. Wait, when did I actually start this? Because I'm planning on only doing an hour of coding. Looks like about... I can't read that. There. No. Check later. Anyway, so now we have that. We have a faction. We then have a name in here as well. Then be acolyte. We have color. So let's go with a more pinkish color. Okay. So now we have model. What else do we have? Do we have let's add a needs whitelist, and let's just set that to false. So I like to generally order my stuff so that you have booleans at the bottom. So stuff that are just toggleable, you just move to the bottom. Just so that things can move. That's what I think I'm going to go with. Let's go with health as well. So 100 and armor 100 as well. Why not? So we can always go through and add more support for this stuff later down the line, where you can change what's here. But generally this is what I'm going to go with for now. So what we're going to need is we're going to need a global thing called faction. So factions, let's go with an S. So factions is equal to factions or an empty table. Actually, screw it, we're trying to be as efficient as possible. So we can't use any of the shorthands because they're technically slower, but generally it's not that big of a problem. So do functions, no function, factions dot register. So I say we have a name. Now we'll just have a table. So now we just do faction table dbl dot name is equal to dbl. So that's what we have. Then if God, my English spelling is dreadful today. Put an if for when so we're just going to put a print here that will just read, that will tell us that the faction tbl.name has been registered. In theory I could do a string format here instead, but it's not that big of a deal. So now faction, so now we have jobs dot register. So then we have tbl and then faction. So actually, to make this seem more, what's the word? More like how darkup is, why not do tbl? Yeah, just return tbl.name. Or should I be smart? I'm not sure. Because technically we can use numbers as well as our faction reference. So exactly how darkup does it. Because the reason why you can use it is it's faster to network a number over a string, but I think I'd only want to use a number if I was having to network the faction over anyway, so I'm just going to use the name, and so I'll just return the name onto that. Okay, so if that should be lowercase faction. So if not faction, no, it would be if not factions, faction. Dear God. Okay, then faction equals other. So we're going to create another faction here called other. Oh wait, why am I doing other? That's not quite right. That's the wrong place. Oops. You know. So we don't do anything on this global table because the global table, if we store anything massive on it, it's going to be really memory intensive in comparison to storing it on this local table. And so as long as we have register get functions and we store all of the data locally on this table, if we create an extra memory object when we reference it, it's going to automatically be handled by the garbage handler, and I'll just get rid of it. So that's why we are storing all of our stuff on these local variables at the top, and we will just keep very simple and basic functions in comparison on the bottom. So things that we can add is, for example, on faction we can add hooks into this to basically go with, oh yeah, the faction has been registered, but I don't think that will be necessary. So we will now go, so if they haven't got a faction. Cool. We then store in the job table. We store the name, and then we just store the table. And on the table, we just store the faction name. And now we just return the name. Of the faction. So technically we could try and use teams as well if we were really wanted to. But actually, yeah, let's make a team. So I don't actually use teams a lot. So where is my there? This is the one I want. Okay, let's go here. Cool. So from here, I can just search for functions. So if you want, this is the best place to find functions, variables, whatever now, pretty much. The only time you might have an advantage is if you were to look through the code on a repository like darkrp. A lot of people wouldn't recommend looking at darkrp because it uses a lot of outdated coding methods. But here you go. See at the bottom here we have a nice little example. So we have an ID, we have the name and the colour. Which, yeah. So we now need to store a reference. So we're actually registering teams now. So because we're registering teams, I can actually just return the team ID actually instead. So just return index. Or let's just go with team ID. Team ID. So we have teams set up there. And so now we can modify this for our team. So we go here. We do tbl dot name. So no, we don't. So faction table tbl dot name. Then now we put this there. So we're just going to have a local index here that just equals 1, maybe 2, and then no, I just want it to be local actually. There you go, just like that. ID is equal to index. Index is equal to index plus 1. And tbl.color or color underscore white. So we're going to need lots of these in a lot of places generally. So what we do here is, the reason why we do this is because we need to know whether or not if something is invalid and isn't defined within your job table or your faction table. We don't want it to error. We just want it to default to a value so that we don't get any script errors. So in this case, we just default it to the color of white, and then that's that. So in the long run, there are simpler methods to do that, and I'm actually thinking now why not? Let's just do it anyway. So TBL color is equal to table color equals white. So we just go through and do this a whole load, and this just makes our life a lot easier when we can just go there, and we will always now know that the color object that is stored on the faction is valid. I'm now thinking we might not need color on job, but we will see. We can always go through and delete stuff later down the line. So we now have an ID, and so just tbl.id. So actually no, that will need to just be lower. So we're going to create another else here, and then we're just going to do team ID is equal to faction, I can't spell, faction table tbl.name .id. So this is the way we can do that, and it's, as you can see, fairly simple. So this will now register into this table, into this one, and then we have the job table as well. So now the real question will be when we get into the panels, is how we structure stuff from there. So one of the big problems we have at the moment with how the code is set up, I'm just opening a drink, is that we have a reference from jobs to faction, but not factions to jobs. So it's a one-way link at the moment. So we can't easily go from the factions and work out what ranks and stuff everyone have. But we can go from a job and easily find its faction. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do a bit to do with the faction table. So because we have its name, we can usually get the faction from doing this, and then all we do is I've done that wrong. So do that, and then so let's actually just define faction. I know, I don't want jobs. There you go, just that. And then now we can, so there are two methods we can now do. We can either we can store the faction table in there as well, which is possible, and uses, if I remember correctly, it uses an extra 32 bits, so it's not that bad of a solution. Because in comparison, if we store the name of it, we actually use an extra 16 bytes per character. So it's something that seems so counterintuitive that storing the table is more efficient on memory than storing the name of it. But it is actually true. The only potential problem we have with the system is that if it has already been referenced by the faction, then when we re-register it, we will then get twice the number of jobs. Which is a problem. So there are two ways to go about that. But the easiest one, I think, in my eyes, will just be to do... actually no, it gets fixed anyway. Because this will always load before this one. And then this file will cause a reload in the file that it's been included by. And then that will have included this one beforehand. So this one will include, then this one includes, and then there won't be any problems. Hopefully. So, that's what we have. So that is the first bit of the job and category system. So we have some stuff that we can change. So technically we can also do, instead of tpl.faction equal faction, let's actually go the full range and do table faction faction. So we now have a reference to itself. No, not to itself. So technically we can actually get back to itself. So if we have a faction, if we have a job, we can get back to the job by doing, so if we have the job that's called job, we can do job.faction.jobs and then job. We don't have an ID reference, do we? But let's just go with job.id, and that would actually get you back to the job. I mean, you do need to use the ID in the first place, but all in all, so let's go with job ID. So job ID in this case is just the length of the table plus 1. And then that will be our job ID. So job ID is equal to job ID. Oh, no, it's not job ID, it will just be ID. So we now have quick and easy to use IDs from within the system. So, to get from factions and whatnot to another job, we can very quickly create a system that uses IDs to link to each other. So, for example, the faction name, we're still referencing it through a string here, but because we have team IDs, we can also rewrite this again to use team IDs. But that will just write as a to-do later down the line, is convert string storing to IDs. Because we don't need to store duplicate data. So you see here we have the character, but then we also have the name here as well. And if we have this as a number, then it will just be nicer. for us to use. And now I think it actually does return the team ID. So it makes sense to reference the object that way. So let's do it. Let's create I think I'm just overcomplicating this now. Yeah, so that'll be something that you'd want to rewrite at some point. Convert strings to IDs. So this is a very basic bit of code, and now we need to figure out how the hell do you now use this. So I'm going to create a new file. No, not new file. Let's just create a new folder in here, and let's just call this default jobs. So default jobs. So again, we're going to create a new file, call it manifest.lower. Let's just copy along the current manifest and just call this default jobs. And then let's just include a jobs.lower. So we create a new file in here called jobs.lower. There you go. And then before that we have factions.lower. And so now I create a new file called factions.lower. So we go back to the sh_job.lower, and so we now have the factions.register. So let's register faction _Sith. Do factions.register, and now we just do a table. So we go name is equal to Sith. What else do we have? So we then what's her description? It's equal to Dark Force user. Order, let's just go with 1, and color, again, let's just write what we have here. So now that should work. So I could get rid of that, and this will work no problem. Now, so something that I didn't, and now I think of it, I look back on it, I didn't actually write, was the other table. So the other table will need to be referenced, will need to be created very early on. So pretty much it can't be defined within the table because it needs a faction for it as well. So we just copy this and put it at the bottom of the file. So we now just have a file here. So we just go with name is equal to other. Description is equal to just the odd ones out. For example, order, let's just go with 100, and then color is equal to color 150, 150, and 150. So a grey color. So this way, if we have a job that we register and it doesn't have a valid faction on it, it will default to this other faction. We'd have no problems with it. So now we go to jobs, and we now create a jobs.register. So we now do function. Not function. So we now just go. Let's just go job underscore. No. Wait. How am I storing stuff in the job table? Is it still by name? Yeah. now wondering whether I should actually return the team IDs. Let's just go with the name still. IDs are a bit more, will still be a bit more internal. So just do jobs.register. So this time we have a table and then a faction underneath. So our faction for this time is Seth. So now we just kind of copy and paste this bit of code here, back across, and we now have our first job. It doesn't have a lot on it, but that should now work. And yeah, I do know I haven't actually written the include system yet. So let's go back to here, and let's also actually write that we need the include system. And another thing I actually forgot about was the player name, because I feel like you do want to be able to overwrite players' names. So now we are on to the ever so slightly annoying part, which is that we now need to loop through all folders that are within this game mode, and then we now need to check the manifest file and then include them based off the client files, the shared files, and the server files, and then run the onload function if it exists. So what we need to do is we first need to find a way in which we can loop through files. So I assume that means we want to have a look at the file library. So we have file.find. That seems fairly useful. Now what examples do we have? Not very useful. But we do have dark RP. So let's have a look. Let's see what dark RP does. So let's just go to its init.lower. Well, let's have a look what it does. So it has a gamemode folder.name, gamemode/modules. Interesting. So you can see it. This appears to be some sort of include system. Interesting. So code is code. It doesn't really matter where I get it from. And in this case, this is perfectly valid. It's an include system that works for what we want it to do. So let's just copy and paste over, because we don't need to. This will do most of the code for us. Like, we don't need to over-engineer and completely redesign every single little bit of the code. So what this is doing is pretty much, it looks through the folders, then it'll check its disabled default system, and it'll check to see, okay, is this folder disabled? If it is, then continue on. So I like this disabling system. I really like that you can have the option to disable modules if they are not needed. So let's just include that. So for now, I'm just going to store a table here for now, just so it doesn't error. So we now need to decide what exactly. So we already know our load order. So it should load the core modules first, and then it should load the modules. So let's define a local function load core modules. So we now are here. So we can copy and paste this part of the code, because that is pretty much what we want. Only different is it is core underscore modules. That is going to annoy me now that I saw that I haven't also done an underscore here. There you go. So we get all of the stuff, all of the folders, and we now want to look through it with this. So we don't give any form of care about the index of this loop because this is a numerical number. We don't care about that. We really do not care about it. So the next thing you see them do is they run this include system here. Or is that in the next step? That is in the next step. Yes. Yeah. Fine. Okay. Let's just keep this commented out here for now. So now, first thing we need to do is we also have the function that we found for. So it allows us to find a directory and it tells us, or we have a file exists. Hang on a minute. I need to think. I think it works. I think it's file dot. I think it exists on a not a dictionary, on a folder. Doesn't work client side. It's one of those weird bugs that you can't really work around. Oh, there are workarounds, right? So this should work. So can I do Gary's mod? Yeah, so I should be able to use if exists from there. So we just go with if file exists, not data, then do game mode slash. Have I done? Oh, I have just realised that I've done something very wrong, and that would also explain why this. There you go. I've got this little bit of code here. Oh, not code, folder. I've got to put it in the game mode folder. Oops. So now let's create a new folder and call it game mode. Now let's save that. Close out of that. Now drag and drop. Drag every file and folder except for they cannot move it for some reason. Weird. None of these files are open. Still weird. I'll keep my to-do file here. Okay, maybe it doesn't like me moving it like that. If not, okay, so it's because they're open. So let's just close every file here. This is one of the annoying things with Atom. Sadly, just something that you can't really work around with using Atom. And I haven't checked any other coding language, not coding language, text editor yet to see if they work. So we now have root is equal to blah game mode core module. So we go with if game modes, then we add in root, then we add folder, then we add another slash, and then we add manifest. No, that's within the, sorry, that's within here. So then manifest.lower. So if this file has a manifest, we can then go with cool. And so we now define, so we now get our module data is equal to, so now we include the file, so it is root dot folder, no, on speech marks, folder dot slash dot slash manifest, no, just manifest, dot lower. So we now have a module data. So this is a collection. This is just what gets returned by this core module. This manifest.lower. It just returns some information for us. So what this means is that if someone wanted to be malicious and inject extra files, it's slightly harder to do so because they need to learn, they need to make sure that the version and stuff like that are the same. So you can put in protection with your code later down the line, which will just go with, this is what the valid manifest code should look like, and if it doesn't look like that, don't include the file. So now we just loop through this bit of data. So if I go, so if module, no, if module data dot shared files, for example, then we'll just for index file in ipairs. So doing an ipairs loop because this thing is numerical. So then do module data dot shared files. Do then end, and then if server, then else, no, not else, just end. So add cs lower file, and now we just create local file name is equal to root dot folder file name, and now we just do an include file name, and so this will now include our core modules. So if I now go after this and then say, oh, load our modules, it will now include all of the modules that we have. So we're going to have a near identical system for the code. Like so close that we can just copy and paste this over. So yeah, we will have this disabled modules part, but we don't necessarily need to define it off the code. We could base it off the manifest file or whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write a note about it, telling me, let's go back at some point and let's work out what bit that you want to work out. And I will be stopping the stream probably once I finish this and save, and we then just print some data to see if it works. So now we just change this from core modules just to modules, and now it will work. And because I have only done shared files at the moment, there should be no problem with that. So now if I again do n, we now have a look, and hopefully this will load. No, it won't. I've got something big and something important. For starters, this isn't the init.lower file. This isn't the correct file that I need. Oops. I want a shared.lower. And then that's where I want to put this. Because a shared.lower, this will generally have more information up at the top about the thing. If I just get rid of that and just go include shared.lower and then add CS_lower file. So add CS_lower file, what this means is just send this file that we have here, send it to the client, because there's a way, basically the client can only request files that have been sent to it by the server. So it's a way in which it means that the client can't just include any file they'd like to, willy-nilly. It needs to be sent to them first. And so it's a way in which you can control who has access to what files. And so that's something that we need to go worry about, is we don't want the client to be able to include anything they want, and we want them to only see what they need to see. So this now, if I go to the shared lower, now I'm going to go slightly against my better judgment and do a timer.create. Actually no, let's just not do that for now. Later down the line I might do a timer.create, but for now all I care about is just load core modules. Let's just run the function like that. The reason why you'd have a timer.create is if you are uploading files to the FTP, if you have a timer.create there, it's going to cause less lag as less files will get included. So now if I do no, now it should hopefully work. So we have no script errors, but we also didn't get a print. So let's have a look at why. Okay, let's go to my local network. And it's not that. There we go. So we have some script errors on line 34 in here. So 34, I forgot to define jobs. Well done. So we just do the same thing we did for factions, or there. I just realised we've been efficient and I just went back into my old habit. So it's small, it's subtle. So we still have on line 6 in jobs.lower. I need a comma here. There you go, so it says faction other has been registered, which is nice. But it also gets included twice. I don't have a second print in that, do I? Or it's just because they're loaded twice, which could be the case. Let's just change the level, because if we're getting two includes like that, that isn't good. So we haven't actually set the name of it, so it claims it's just base game mode. But there you go, only one faction has been registered, and one faction on the Sith. So now, if I do a _run, and then I try and print the factions table, you can see we only have the register. If I go jobs, we only have the register function. We can't get the faction information out of these functions. Which means we do kind of need another job. Another function, I mean. So I'm going to show what I meant by... So we're going to do factions.get all. And then we just return faction table. Simple as that. So now if I print jobs, and now if I print factions, you can see I now have a get all function. And now I have this. Now, hopefully, if I have made this correctly, you can see that on the faction we have the table thing. And so if we go back, so if we do faction.getAll .jobs.sith, no, faction.all sith.jobs 1 .faction, we end up with the same information. And if we then do, if we were then to modify this, it would change the thing, because they're the same bit of data. It's not two different bits of data, it's just one bit of data that's referenced in two different places. So you can make, if you print out the outputs and you start kind of diving through, you start realizing, like, oh, if this was just us moving, it's just an endless loop. So one of the problems with this is that if you wanted to network this information, you can't. Because there's a big problem here, that you now have an infinite loop, because you have a faction that inside the faction references the faction. So you have lots of infinite loops there, that means you can't just use a net.write table to network it. And so you're going to need to come up with your own way of creating this. But for our means, this works. So we can also now create two more functions. So function factions dot get So there you go, so we return a fake table. And now I'm just gonna scroll down. Now function jobs.get all. So this will just return all the jobs for us. So this just returns job table. And then we had another one again for job cobs. Yes, wonderful spelling there. Get job. And then return job table job. So now that we have them, I can also do, just print that factions, and if I now print jobs, you now see I do that. But now if I do jobs.getAll, you can now see I have a bit of data. So if I now do, this is going to script over here. If I now do armor is equal to 1. Oops, no. No, that is not what I meant to do. Echo dot echo light. Now do armor is equal to 1. If I now remove that, you now see that armor should be equal to 1. Oh, because there we go. Now that should work. So now if we print it, you see armor is equal to 1. But what that means is that we have now lost. If we now go here, you now see armor is 1, even though we have got it from the faction table. So I'm hoping this is kind of getting into your head that they are the same exact bit of data. They aren't separate objects, they're the same thing. So if I were to join the server, which I guess I have, I think of it, I hadn't realised I did. I don't have a C menu, got no C menu, got no key menu, nothing. Absolutely nothing. If I say hi, like, that gets added. So, in the next one that I'm going to do, I will create the ability for people to join jobs based off either just if they're whitelisted or whatever. So that's going to be what we'll be working on next time. As I think I've now gotten to the hour mark. Let me have a look. Yes, slightly over an hour, according to what I'm seeing on OBS. So that is the stream for today. So as I said, next Saturday I'll be working on finalising this. Like, this is now, let's say, 50% done. The job system, let's be slightly less optimistic and go with 30. And then once we start working on this, we can then go down the list and start deciding exactly how stuff will go. So that's going to be the end of the stream. So talk to you guys next time. And if you have any questions in the meantime, just send me a message on Discord. Please through a public channel.